Hello my fellow noobs and newbies to channel. So you may have stumbled on this video because you are eager to become a mangaka and want someone to draw with. Today, I'll be telling you a story on how I failed at line weight. So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing line weight yet again. Yes, again. And we're going to go and review why line weight is so important and how I learned from my previous experience, like literally not only a couple of videos ago, but we're going to discuss on how we can improve on that art. So originally I was thinking about doing a video related to values and shading, but after spending a couple of hours drawing a background piece, I realized that I wasn't drawing any values or shading whatsoever. So now I'm back to do a video about line weight because I realized how bad I am at it, and I want to share with you what I did after doing a couple of Google searches online and also finding out more about line weight and how it relates to light and shadows. So at this point you may be thinking to yourself, alright noobish, but what is line weight? You keep on saying line weight this, line weight that, but what actually is line weight? So line weight refers to how thick, and no, not that kind of thick, but it's how thick and how thin a line is. It also tells us a couple of other things. It tells our eyes like this, something is closer, something is farther, or something has more light reflected onto it. And it also tells us that there's not a light in that area. The reason why line weight is so important is because line weight tells us a couple of things. It tells us whether there is light shining on that object. It also helps us to identify the volume or the shape of the object, and it also tells us where to direct our eyes. Like for example, if an object or a person has thin lines on them, it's basically showing us that there is light peering down on that person or thing. And then if it has thick lines, it just tells us that it is very important to look at, or the shape is not in an area where there's a lot of light, or is just saying that, hey, this is a really important piece of the artwork and you just really need to look at that. Alright, so let's use one of my drawings as a really good example about how to use line weight. Well, here, what you should not do when using line weight. Remember my last video, your friend gives you tips on drawing lines? Yeah, I should have took my own tips because it looked horrible. You know, the one that has like the little flowers and the window and the box. Yeah, that one. Or this one. Yeah, man, what were you thinking? Oh, did you see that painting? It looks like trash. So first of all, my cabinets do not look like cabinets. They look more like cubbies, and they look like dysfunctional cubbies at that. But most importantly, I feel like I should have been more organized before doing this drawing. So for example, I should have created a light source over on the top right hand corner, and the light would be peering in through a 4 square shaped window that looks like a plus sign. But let's ignore that for a second. But going back to the line art. So all of the lines from the flower and the vase that are closer to the right, or let's just say closer to the window, should have been more thinner lines. Whereas all of the lines towards the left of the flowers and the vase should have been thicker lines because the light is not really hitting that direction. So shading is one of my weaknesses right now, and I'm really trying my best to improve on that, but I am hoping to get better at it as I keep on drawing. So if you have any tips for me about shading and how I can get better at it, please feel free to leave me a comment in the comment section below. But if you're like me and you struggle with line weight and line art and basically all of the above, then go ahead and hit that like button. So let's go back to talking about thin lines. So with thin lines, you want to use them for various different reasons, one of which I keep on repeating on here, which is using it when light is a really strong source on an object. Another example of using thin lines is when you want to highlight individual hair follicles on someone's head. Or another good example would be when you're trying to highlight like scratches when someone's in a very intense battle, or like some pavement on the road, or maybe even a dusty little road. You want to highlight all the little pebbles in a way to make the definition of the path seem more realistic in a way. So here I'm showing you some examples of some of the techniques I use with thin lines for my most recent art piece, Water. And here I use thin lines to create definitions for the cracked glass. I also used it for cracks in the cinder block, or that was like a column that was broken. I also used it for cracked tile, and I even used it for folds in the skirt of the character that I drew. Now, I'm getting really sick and tired of talking about thin lines, yes, and that is my fault. But let's start talking about why thick lines are important as well. So with thick lines, remember when I told you that you should use them when there are areas that it doesn't have a lot of light? Well, sometimes you don't want to use it for that purpose. Sometimes you want to use it to make something stand out. And I'm using my same artwork called Water to basically explain how I used the dark lines. So in this picture, I used her hand. I used thick lines around her hand. So that way, when you first look at the picture, you notice that her hand is scratched up and it has a bunch of cuts, a bunch of scratches, and it also has some sort of power that she's kind of manifesting. But this would not have been highlighted if I didn't use thick, bold lines around her hand. Otherwise, it would have just blended in with the rest of the piece. So a good example of using thick lines when light is not shining directly on something is when you're trying to draw a person or a subject. So let's imagine that there is a light shining on top of someone's head. So the light is going to be beaming on top of their forehead. It's going to be beaming on top of maybe their cheekbones and some of their chin, and maybe a little bit of their nose and their top lip. So where you want to draw those thick lines are the areas that obviously the light is not very bright. So that would be the bottom of the chin, or maybe the bottom part of the lower lip, or maybe even the upper lip, because the light is not really going to shine very much there. Also a little bit under the nose. And if you want to make other features kind of stand out, or you want to make form kind of stand out better, you can even highlight with thick lines, maybe just the surrounding area of the hair. And for example, if you want to do that on objects, like let's say, for example, you want to create a building, you can create thick lines on the bottom of the building itself. That way you can define that, hey, this is the bottom of the building. You can also put the thick lines under the balconies. So that way they can see, oh, there's balconies up on this building. Or there is, you want to put it on the side of the building so you can make it seem like a square or a rectangle or what have you. And now to wrap things up with this video, and I'm not going to say that, but pretty much you get the picture of what we discussed about today, since I've said it so many times and you're probably sick and tired of me saying it. But basically just keep in mind how you are drawing your lines, whether you want them to make details or you want it to be less visible or more visible perhaps. But if you have any pictures and you want to share them, I do have an Instagram as well, so feel free to either send me an email that's in my YouTube channel description, or you can join me on Instagram or even Facebook. I have the links in my description below as well. You can send them to me and I'll be happy to share them on those social media platforms, and maybe I'll even share them on future videos as well. But until then, thank you so much for joining me, noobs and newbies, and I hope to see you all on the next one.